Thing, we got an Eastern Conference Player of the Week.
It's incredible. She does things that we haven't seen. You know, in the moment, sometimes it's surreal. Just incredible.
I get my hats off to Tutu to lead us and put us in the right position to really be effective.
Clark launches, pulls at the foul line, and knocks it down. Time from CC. Step back, deep one, got it from Eugene. Just shaking off that Seattle defense. Purple rain in Seattle. She's caught fire. She puts it up and scores. That's it. It's a triple-double for Caitlin. Bounce pass. Oh my goodness gracious. Clark throws the foul. Oh, she hit it. Clark from way downtown. She hits a three.
My goodness.
We need to talk about what is happening with Caitlin Clark's MVP campaign right now, because the numbers she is producing in this second half of the season are making a conversation that certain corners of this league's media ecosystem have been desperately trying to avoid completely and permanently unavoidable. And we also need to address the situation involving Indiana Fever assistant coach Brienne January, because her visible reaction during the Player of the Week announcement has generated exactly the kind of attention that raises serious and legitimate questions about the internal culture surrounding this franchise and this player. Let us start with what Clark actually accomplished this week, because the award and the statistics deserve to be examined in their full and proper context before anything else enters the conversation. Clark has won the WNBA Eastern Conference Player of the Week for the third time this season. Third time. And here is the part that makes that number even more remarkable than it already sounds in isolation. Injury has cost her significant stretches of availability this season. Without those missed games, without those periods where she was managing her back injury and operating under a minutes restriction that actively constrained her ability to produce at her actual competitive peak, the total number of Player of the Week awards she would have accumulated could be considerably higher than 3. 3 is the documented number. 3 is what she managed, despite everything this season has placed directly in her path. Her numbers this week were 25.7 points per game, 53.7% shooting from the field, 9 assists per game, and 5 rebounds per game. Let those numbers land individually and collectively before we move forward. 25-plus points, 53+% efficiency, 9 assists per game. Across multiple professional basketball games in the second half of a season, where she has already made permanent history with the first 40-point, 10-assist game this league has ever seen, the fastest path to 1,500 career points anyone has ever taken, and a triple-double delivered with the authority of someone who has decided that the record books are where she lives now. Now let us talk about the MVP conversation, because that is where everything Clark is doing right now points, and where the stakes of this current stretch become genuinely and consequentially significant. In Clark's first professional season, she finished 4th in MVP voting, despite producing numbers that in numerous previous years of this league's history would have won the award outright and without meaningful competition. The media voting process, informed by its own institutional preferences and its own documented biases, determined that the award belonged elsewhere. Here we are in year 3. The second sustained stretch where Clark is operating at this level of excellence, and the head-to-head competition between her and A'ja Wilson, the two players who will be the final names standing when this MVP debate reaches its most serious and consequential phase, is about to become one of the defining individual athletic storylines of this entire WNBA season. Consider the statistical comparison taking shape right now. Wilson is averaging 32 points, 12 rebounds, and 4.7 assists per game. Those numbers in most years of this league's history produce an uncontested MVP. They are extraordinary individual statistics from a player who is legitimately one of the greatest to ever compete in this sport. And yet Clark, averaging 25.7 points with 9 assists and 5 rebounds while shooting over 53% from the field, is constructing a statistical argument that this comparison is genuinely competitive and genuinely worthy of the serious debate it deserves. The media carries institutional biases that Clark's performance history in this league cannot always fully overcome simply through statistical dominance. She understands that. Everyone paying honest attention understands that. And that reality is precisely why this week, this stretch of consecutive dominant performances following the All-Star break, carries such specific and significant weight. When you produce numbers at this level, with this consistency across multiple competitive contexts, you create a situation where media bias has to actively choose to ignore documented statistical reality rather than simply exercise reasonable judgment in an ambiguous situation. That is a far more difficult position to defend publicly and far harder to maintain under the sustained scrutiny that an engaged and large audience applies. Indiana will need to keep winning games for this MVP campaign to fully materialize in Clark's favor. Individual statistics exist within the context of team outcomes in award voting at this level, and Indiana's record in the second half of this season will either amplify or significantly diminish the statistical case Clark is building week by week through her performances. The wins are necessary. The dominant individual numbers are necessary, and Clark maintaining this level of sustained excellence is the only variable that sits fully within her control as the season moves toward its decisive final stretch. Paige Bueckers is no longer part of this conversation at the top level of the MVP debate. Olivia Miles, despite her genuinely extraordinary rookie season and her electrifying competitive performance against Clark in the Minnesota game, is not yet operating at the sustained statistical plateau that serious MVP consideration at the ballot's highest positions requires. The field has narrowed to 2. Clark versus Wilson. That is the actual contest. And everything Clark produces from this point forward is being evaluated in direct and specific comparison to what Wilson delivers across the same games and the same weeks. Now let us address the Brienne January situation directly, because the footage and the widespread reaction it has generated reflect something about the Indiana Fever's organizational culture that cannot be responsibly dismissed as an overreaction or a misinterpretation of a single captured moment. During the announcement of Clark's Player of the Week award, footage captured January appearing visibly less than enthusiastic about the recognition being publicly extended to her own player. The reaction generated immediate and significant conversation across the platforms where this league's most engaged audience operates, and the questions it raised are serious ones that deserve honest examination rather than institutional deflection. Is January unhappy that Kelsey Mitchell, who produced 37 extraordinary points in the Minnesota game and is currently on a remarkable consecutive 20-point game streak that has her in range of league records, did not receive the award instead? Is there something deeper operating within the organizational dynamics that this moment inadvertently revealed publicly? Was this simply a misread moment where January happened to be captured looking elsewhere or processing something unrelated to the specific announcement occurring around her? The honest answer, stated with complete intellectual honesty, is that no one outside the organization can know with absolute certainty what January's visible reaction at that specific moment reflected about her internal state or her private opinions. What can be assessed with confidence is what the footage appears to show and what that appearance has communicated to the substantial and deeply engaged audience that has been watching this franchise navigate one of the most scrutinized and consequential seasons in WNBA history. Kelsey Mitchell's consecutive 20-point game streak is real. It is remarkable, and it deserves genuine celebration without qualification. She is on a trajectory that puts her in range of Aja Wilson's record in that specific statistical category, and she needs 2 more consecutive 20-plus point performances to pass it. That is a legitimate and impressive individual achievement that deserves the recognition and the appreciation that genuine competitive excellence always earns. Mitchell's supporters arguing that her 37-point performance against Minnesota warranted Player of the Week consideration are making a reasonable sports argument that merits honest and respectful engagement. But Clark's weekly numbers across the full competitive week, 25.7 points, 53.7% shooting, 9 assists, 5 rebounds across multiple games against multiple opponents, represent the kind of comprehensive and sustained statistical production that Player of the Week awards were specifically designed to recognize and celebrate. 37 points in one game against one opponent is extraordinary in isolation and within that specific competitive context. 25-plus points and 9 assists per game across a full week of professional competition while shooting over 53% from the field reflects sustained elite excellence across multiple competitive contexts, multiple defensive schemes, and multiple game situations. Both players deserve acknowledgement for what they produced. The award went to Clark, and a member of the coaching staff appearing visibly displeased about her own player winning a major individual honor generates legitimate questions that cannot simply be waved away, regardless of what the underlying explanation ultimately proves to be. The broader implications of this specific moment connect directly to the ongoing conversation about the internal organizational dynamics of this franchise and whether the environment genuinely and completely supports Clark's competitive success and her individual recognition within the league. Throughout this season, observers have documented coaching decisions, communication patterns, selective celebrations of certain player achievements over others, and organizational behaviors that have raised persistent questions about the alignment between what this franchise says publicly about Clark and what its actual decisions and reactions reveal about the priorities driving the culture around her. The January footage adds a data point to that conversation that will be difficult to dismiss simply because the precise internal meaning of the reaction cannot be confirmed from outside the building. What can be confirmed without dispute is the statistical reality that is accumulating around this player. Clark has won Player of the Week 3 times this season. She would have won it more without the injury disruptions this year produced. She is averaging numbers in the second half of this season that are pushing her directly into a genuine 2-person MVP conversation, with the player widely considered the best in this league and one of the greatest in its history. And every time she receives the individual recognition her performance demands, the people surrounding her on the organizational sideline are being photographed, filmed, and analyzed by an audience that has been watching this situation unfold across an entire season, and that has developed a sophisticated understanding of the patterns operating within it. The expectation that any member of the Indiana Fever coaching staff would respond to a Clark Player of the Week announcement with visible and genuine enthusiasm is completely reasonable. These moments are connected to the broader accountability conversation that has defined this franchise's season. When coaching decisions, communication patterns, selective organizational celebrations, and now visible reactions to individual recognition all appear to point in a consistent direction, the questions about organizational culture become substantially harder to dismiss as individual coincidences unconnected to each other. Clark is on a legitimate MVP campaign. The numbers make that statement on their own without requiring advocacy. The sustained excellence across multiple weeks of this second half of the season, combined with the historical achievements she has been stacking since the break, represents the kind of statistical case that forces a genuine and honest reckoning with the individual excellence being produced on that basketball court game after game. The media will need to make its choices about how to weigh her production against Wilson's production. Indiana will need to keep winning. Clark will need to keep competing at this level across every remaining game of the regular season. And the organizational environment surrounding her will need to demonstrate the kind of genuine collective investment in her success that individual excellence at this level deserves from every person with organizational responsibility for her professional environment. 3 times Player of the Week, 53.7% from the field, 9 assists per game. The MVP conversation is real, it is serious, and the evidence of what Clark is producing right now demands that it be engaged with, honestly, regardless of whatever institutional preferences or documented biases exist within the voting process that will ultimately make the determination. The numbers are there, the case is being built, and nobody who is genuinely watching this basketball is prepared to look away from what is unfolding right now.